Today we're diving into a story that feels like it's straight out of science fiction. We're talking about bridging a 2,000-year-old medical art with some seriously cutting-edge technology. It's about teaching a machine to feel, to listen, and to diagnose, just like a master physician from antiquity.
So let's just get right to the big question, the one that this is all about. Can an AI really, truly practice a medical art that's been perfected over millennia? Can a piece of code actually replicate a skill that takes a human being an entire lifetime to learn?
You know, at its core, this is about a massive shift in thinking. We're going from a diagnostic method that's a subjective art, one built on a lifetime of human feeling and experience, to something driven by cold, hard, objective data and algorithms. And it all happens in just a fraction of a second.
To really get this, though, you have to understand the art behind the technology. So let's start with the tradition itself, the ancient practice of pulse diagnosis.
So in traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, a doctor isn't just checking your heart rate. No, they're placing their fingers on three very specific points on your wrist. They're called kun, guan, and qi. And each of these spots is believed to correspond to different organ systems in your body.
Now this is what's so incredible. A master physician is feeling for these tiny, super subtle patterns, the depth of the pulse, its shape, its strength, the rhythm. It is an art form that takes literally decades to perfect. And that's the real challenge, right? It's incredibly difficult to teach, let alone standardize.
So, how in the world do you translate that masterful human touch into technology? Well, turns out you build a digital fingertip.
The secret sauce here is a high-precision MEMS sensor. Just think of it like a microscopic electronic fingertip. It is so ridiculously sensitive that it can pick up the absolute faintest pressure waves in your artery, right at those three key points. But here's the thing. Just feeling the pulse isn't enough. The raw signal that comes from the sensor is, well, it's a mess. It's full of noise from you moving, from your breathing, even from electrical interference. So the very first and most critical step is cleaning all of that up.
And this is exactly how it works. That raw signal at the top is just chaos, right? So first, a DC blocker filter comes in and stabilizes everything, getting rid of that slow drift from, say, your breathing. Then a special low-pass filter acts like a superfine sieve, getting rid of all that other high-frequency noise. And what are you left with? That beautiful, clean, medical-grade waveform at the bottom.
Okay, so once you have that crystal clear signal, the real magic begins. This is where the AI starts to decode what that waveform actually means in the language of traditional Chinese medicine.
Let's just take one example. In TCM, there's a famous pulse type called the Wiry pulse. But what does that even mean? What does wiry feel like? And how on earth do you teach a machine to recognize a feeling?
Well, the ancient texts are actually really poetic about it. They describe the wiry pulse, or xianmai, as being straight, long, and taut, kind of like pressing down on a perfectly tuned guitar string. It's often seen as a sign of high stress or tension in the body.
Now, an AI can't feel a guitar string, obviously, but what it can do is measure data. So the algorithm translates this poetic feeling into a hard number, something called the tension index, which is basically a mathematical ratio that reflects the tension in your blood vessels.
And this is how it makes a decision. It's all about thresholds. If that tension index is over 0.6, boom, the algorithm flags it as a wiry pulse. If it's even higher, say over 0.8, then it's a tight pulse, which is even more severe. The art has become a science.
And by applying this kind of logic across dozens of different measurements, the AI can start to build a remarkably complete diagnostic picture. And its diagnostic vocabulary is huge. The system is trained to identify 28 classic pulse types. It can tell the difference between a slow pulse, qimai, and a rapid one, shumai. It can even look at the very shape of the waveform to distinguish between a slippery and a choppy pulse. It's a whole diagnostic framework.
Now, you might be thinking this requires some giant supercomputer, right? Nope. And this is the mind-blowing part. All of this complex analysis happens in milliseconds, right there on a tiny, low-power ESP32 chip that would fit on your fingertip. This is edge computing at its absolute finest.
Okay, this all sounds pretty incredible, but let's be real. When it comes to any medical device, there's really only one question that matters.
Does it actually work? I mean, can this system really stand up to the high standards of modern medical technology?
Well, the data really speaks for itself.
The algorithm is 98.8% accurate at identifying the key feature points in the pulse wave, those little peaks and notches that are absolutely crucial for a correct diagnosis. That's not just good, that's medical-grade performance.
But here's what's really fascinating. Look at how this algorithm, the DDP, stacks up against other methods. Sure, big, complex approaches like deep learning can also be very accurate, but they're power-hungry. They need powerful processors, tons of RAM, and they're slow. This algorithm? It gets you that same top-tier accuracy, but on a tiny, low-power chip with almost zero delay.
And that right there is the real breakthrough. It's not just about being accurate. It's about achieving that incredible medical-grade accuracy in a package that's efficient enough to run on a small, wearable device. That's what makes this technology so accessible and so powerful for everyday health monitoring.
You know, this fusion of ancient art and modern algorithms just blows the doors wide open. It proves these two worlds don't have to be at odds with each other. And it leaves us with this one last, really provocative question. What other ancient wisdom, from medicine, from philosophy, from anywhere, is just sitting there waiting to be unlocked with the right lines of